So let's take a look at this question, a new question for today. In the developed world, average life expectancy is increasing. What problems will this cause for individuals and society? Suggest some measures that could be taken to reduce the impact of aging populations. So, usual process, identify the question type. What are we looking at here? We're looking at a situation question, specifically a problem and solution kind of situation, the most common one that comes up. So we're just going to add that into our plan here, problem and solution, essay. And what do we do next? Hopefully at this point you should already know. We're going to highlight the key words. So what have we got here? A couple of important words in this one. Shouldn't rush over anything here, so we'll take our time. In the developed world, I do think that's kind of important. It's more for the sake of accuracy, but I think if we at least touch on this. So this is what I would deem a secondary keyword rather than a primary keyword. So we're going to actually mark that in green. I know you can't really do that in the exam, but if you can do it in some sort of way, maybe like a dotted underline rather than a full underline, it might just give you that idea. But the important aspects here are that life expectancy is increasing. That's really the main topic of the task. And we're thinking about this in the context of individuals and society. And it's fairly self-explanatory, but of course we are looking here at the problems and measures that can be taken to reduce the impact. So notice that they're not really asking us to solve the problem. We're not making it go away, but we're minimizing the problem. We're making it smaller, we're managing it, I suppose. So we have a few keywords there. Now there is one other keyword here that's really easy to miss because it is not an obvious term like a noun or a specific verb or something like that. It's more related to the grammar, and it will indicate to us a particular time that we are to discuss. I wonder if you can find it here. Hopefully you've landed on this. Will. I'm actually going to mark that in a different color rather than just highlight it, because although it's not really a keyword in terms of the theme, we need to keep it in mind as we respond to the task regardless, because it will dictate the grammar, if not the vocabulary that we use as we respond to this task. And it may actually dictate some of the vocabulary that we use as well. We need to make sure that we are not discussing only, at least, the present, but we're really looking at this in terms of the future. Okay, so watch out for words like will when you are analyzing your task. Okay, now let's think about a plan here. And of course, as usual, we want to have a clear theme for each of our body paragraphs. Sometimes we may just pick out one problem for body paragraph 1, a different problem for body paragraph 2. If you remember from or if you've watched the video course for task 2, you'll know that I recommend that in a problem and solution essay, we look at one problem and one solution to that problem in each paragraph, instead of looking at all the problems in one paragraph and all the solutions in the other paragraph. It's just difficult to tie those ideas together in a cohesive way. Much easier to do problem and solution, different problem and solution. Okay, I wonder, can you have a look at those keywords again and see if there is an opportunity in there for us to split our body paragraphs into two themes that reflect the requirements of the task. So have a look, take a moment, see if you can find two themes. Hopefully you will have seen individuals and society. So this task has actually made it easier for us to differentiate our body paragraphs. Not all tasks will give you that opportunity, and you have to create that opportunity for yourself. But do try to notice when those opportunities are made available to you, They show a really nice understanding of the task, so thus improving task response, task achievement, while also improving coherence and cohesion for giving clear central themes to each of the body paragraphs. Okay, so we're first of all going to look at problems for individuals. So we're going to look at a problem, which will be our topic, our support sentence for that, maybe an example, and then 2 sentences about the solution itself, and then either an explanation for how that solution would work, or more likely a result of the solution. How does the solution help to reduce the impact of the problem, basically? You can't just present the solution and say that's it. You need to explain how that is going to improve the situation. Okay, same down here. TSE, sol, our sol. Of course, we can change this as we go on the fly, but by creating these constraints, they actually help to improve our creativity and our ideas. I think people find it quite difficult to think of ideas when there are no constraints, when there are limitless options. So by limiting our options, we give ourselves more of a focus. That's why I like to put these letters in beforehand. Be flexible, but it's good to have them there to begin with. So let's first of all think about a problem for individuals. What might be one of the problems that will occur for individuals in an age where everybody's living much longer? So one of the problems, I think, is probably going to be the money aspect, the financial aspect on an individual level. The cost of living is a nice way to put it. So we'll just write here COL, because we understand that as a collocation, cost of living. The cost of living is going to be a problem. Why is that going to be a problem? Let's explain, let's support it. Well, that's probably because once you reach a particular age, you usually retire. And once you retire, you are reliant on the work that you've done in the past and the government's help to give you the financial support to survive. So if more of life is spent in retirement, then we may not have the financial resources to cover that longer life. We wouldn't have worked long enough. We wouldn't have saved enough. So more time in retirement. We haven't prepared ourselves to save enough money for that length of life, let's say. So, and a consequence of that is that we'll need to depend on families perhaps as well, and that could be quite a burden on familial relationships. An example then. For this example, we're going to ask the reader to imagine something in their mind by implementing the use of a relative clause. We'll say a man who does this or a man who does that. Could be a woman as well, it's really up to you. But we'll say a man who starts work at a particular time. We want to make this a very visual, easy to envision example. Examples that are created in this way tend to be a lot more powerful. So works at 20, we say retires at 60, don't worry about the prepositions, we'll add them in later. Retires 60, lives to 100. You can see there's a big problem. So you're only working for 40 years, but you're also living for 40 years. So only 2/5 of the life is spent making money. So that's going to be a big problem really. What might be the solution to this issue? Well, although it's not a very nice solution, that's not really what we're looking at when it comes to IELTS. We don't have to think about pleasing everybody. We just need to make a logical assessment here in terms of the solution. So if the problem is that people are retiring at a particular age and they don't have enough money once they reach that retirement, and if a good portion of their life is spent in retirement, then what we could do is we could shrink the length of retirement and extend the length that people work for. In other words, increase age of retirement. So don't allow people to retire and take their government pensions until they reach a particular age. Not a very popular solution, but it is one that would address this issue. It would reduce that impact. Okay. Now, what would be the result of this? Well, the result of this will be that people will have more money when they reach retirement. And the retirement itself would actually be of a shorter length. So it would cover this issue. We could say that people will be better prepared to cover those costs. So better prepared financially, something like that. We'll consider what we're going to say when we get there. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. We can now move on to the idea of society. And notice here we are looking at this on the level of individuals. We're not looking at it as a society, as a group of people. That's why in that example we're going to say a man who, not if people work. We're going to say a man. We're looking at it on an individual level. Now down here, in contrast, we're moving to a collective level. We're looking at society. One of the problems with society is actually sort of related, because it's related to work, but it's not related to money. This is more of a collective idea. This is the idea of employment, particularly if we implement the idea of raising the retirement age, which was what we suggested. First of all, just put the problem down, unemployment. But if we implement this problem here, increasing the age of retirement, then fewer jobs are going to be available for young people. So there'll be decreased turnover. We need to have young people coming into work. So retirement age idea, we'll just refer back to it basically. This is why it would happen. There'd be unemployment because of the retirement age increasing if we implement that, yada yada. Okay, we'll think about it when we get there. Example, I don't think this lends itself that well to an example. I mean, we could do, but it would probably be looking at quite an individual level. Again, we could say a young man who does this, but then it sounds quite individual. So I'm going to come away from the example, and instead I'm going to look at this in terms of a result. What would be the results of this? Well, the results of more and more people in work and fewer jobs going around will be simply that particularly young people, for that I'm looking at that in the plural here, a subsection of society, young people will struggle to find positions. So young people will struggle for work, something like that. Okay, now we'll come to the solution. And the solution, what could we do? Well, we can't do this. I mean, this is making the problem worse from a different perspective, but what we could do is ask the government to create new jobs. Now, how do we create new jobs? You don't create them out of thin air. What you need to do is you usually invest in new markets, in new technologies, in new areas. So we'll ask the government to invest in new technologies. Now, technology is almost always an uncountable noun. We don't usually refer to it in the plural, but we can in this case here. I'd do a little bit more research on this if you are interested, but if you're in the exam, and unless you've got this exact scenario coming up, if you're unsure, it's probably going to be in the uncountable singular form. So keep that in mind if you are looking at the topic of technology or if it comes up in your exam. It's most of the time not, but in this case, when we're looking at different markets and different types of technology, I suppose, then we can look at it in the plural. So invest in new technologies. Now, when we invest in new technologies, as I said, new jobs tend to appear. New jobs. So investment leads to new jobs. We can just even write an arrow here. And what you might notice is that we could actually turn that last section there into a conditional sentence. If the government invests in new technologies, this will create more new jobs and address the issue of unemployment. Okay, something like that. Anyway, there's our plan. So we can now move away from the plan and consider how we might open up our essay. Okay, a good way to get started into that general statement, because it's quite tricky to go from a white page and start making your mark. A good thing to do is to ask yourself a question. This question might be, what would everybody agree on? If it was an opinion question or a discussion opinion question, then you can write something like, well, there is no doubt, or there is no denying that, or it is clear that, something that everybody agrees on. Another question that you can ask is, why am I being asked this? Is this an important issue? Why is this issue important? What is important about it? And when you ask a question like that, you can usually start, if you've got a good answer, you can start your essay by saying, it is important to consider, and then maybe a question word. It is important to consider why. It is important to consider when, who, whether, how, that sort of thing there. Okay? So, I think we can try that here. It is important to consider. Now, what kind of question word do you think would follow this? If we look at the task here. In the developed world, average life expectancy is increasing. What problems will this cause for individuals and society? I think if we go something like how, I think how is probably going to be the most appropriate one. What problems will this cause? How will it affect? That's another way of saying it, isn't it? So it's important to consider how, and then we'll just reference this here. The developed world, you could sort of say the industrialized world or the first world or that sort of thing. I'm just going to use the same expression. I don't think any ideas in my head at the moment are good enough to paraphrase, but I will make it possessive. How the developed world's increasing life expectancy, and notice that there is a bit of repetition here, because maybe there is a bit too much repetition here despite the change of order. What's another word for increasing? Maybe one beginning with R. Rising. How the developed world's rising life expectancy will, as I said, affect. And then we'll come straight into this. Will affect both I'm going to change the order again here. Society. And actually, I'm going to look at this from a plural perspective. So we're looking at it globally, not just individual societies. So it will affect both societies and what's another word for individuals, particularly individuals within a society. We can say citizens. And in fact, the societies possess the citizens. So what we can do here is even out of there. So it is important to consider how the developed world's rising life expectancy will affect both societies and their citizens. Simply put, just a single sentence. Now, when it comes to problem and solution essays, we can usually get away with just writing 2 sentences for the introduction. 1 is the general statement. Number 2 is a plan. No opinions, because we're not really being asked about an opinion here, like do you think it's good or bad? We're just being asked for problems and solutions. So we'll just say this essay will discuss, explore, analyze, any of these verbs are good. We'll discuss some of the problems which might arise. Again, we may be able to be a little bit better with paraphrasing a different word for problems, because we've got problems there. We'll go with issues, but it's not a big deal. This essay will discuss some of the issues which might arise as a result of this. Now, if you see something changing over time, what is that called? A change over time. Think about it in terms of task 1, graphs with a trend. So we'll use this word trend. This essay will discuss some of the issues which might arise as a result of this trend and some ways to, different word for reduce the impact. I used the verb minimize earlier. That's a nice one. Another nice one is mitigate. Again, we're not abolishing, we're not eradicating these problems, but we're managing them, we're making them smaller. So to mitigate these, in fact, if I return back to that idea here, problems. So we ended up needing to use the word problems anyway. I'm going to add one more verb in here because I don't really like the idea of discuss following on for all of the rest of this sentence. I want to throw in an extra verb here just to break it up a little bit. And also because I think solutions or ways to solve a problem, all those kind of nouns, they need a separate verb, a different verb to discuss or explore or analyze. And I think we'll go with something like propose. Propose is good. Suggest is what we've got in the task, so I don't want to use that one really. Let's have a look at that again. It is important to consider how the developed world's rising life expectancy will affect both societies and their citizens. This essay will discuss some of the issues which might arise as a result of this trend and propose some ways to mitigate these problems. Looks good to me.